Hi, I'm Beth Wilson. I'm one of the hosts of STEM in 30, a television program produced at the National Air and Space Museum for middle school students. I want to welcome you to our latest live chat. Before we begin, I do want to mention that STEM in 30 has kicked off its new school season. You can check out our latest episode, which is coming up next month. It'll be on remote sensing. We released another episode last week all about the post office and how it moves your mail from point A to point B. Today's live chat, we are going to be talking about some amazing women. If you have any questions, be sure to put them in the comment section. We'll get to some of them if we are able. If not, we have two really fantastic people from our archives department that will be there to answer your questions. Let's get started. I want to bring in Kelly Doyle, who's the Open Knowledge Coordinator for the Smithsonian Institution. Hi, Kelly. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Kelly, we're not just talking about really fantastic women in the aerospace industry solely today. There's something else going on. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that other special event that's running simultaneously?
Definitely. We're having a Wikipedia Edit-a-Thon that also just started a few moments ago, where we're working to edit women from our collections on Wikipedia. There are roughly 19% of biographies on all of Wikipedia about women. And so this is an effort to get women from our collections onto Wikipedia and just to have more representation about women in STEM online.
You've got some other really great stats about women on Wikipedia. Can you tell us a little bit more about them?
Definitely. So we know out of the 1.8 roughly million biographies that are on Wikipedia right now, 300K roughly are about women, and we know that those are of varying lengths, quality. Some have images, some do not. But Wikipedia has mass views on it globally, and so if someone is missing from Wikipedia, they're really missing from our historical record in a lot of ways and our public consciousness. And adding women from our collections to Wikipedia is really, really valuable as a way to write women back into history who've accomplished amazing things.
Yeah, I found one of the stats about photos interesting. Can you tell us a little bit about why it's important to have photos or images on your Wikipedia page?
Definitely. We know that Wikipedia articles with images typically perform better, meaning they're being viewed many more times in several different languages all across the world. And we also know that home assist devices like Google, Siri, Alexa are pulling from Wikipedia if you're asking them for basic facts. And if you're asking on your phone, the image is going to pop up. And so having an image attached to the Wikipedia article is extremely important.
Also, why I apologize. My cat has just entered and he is pretending to hunt one of his toys. So the odd noises you hear are my cat.
Wants to be a star.
Why is this project important, not only to the Smithsonian, but to the general public as well?
Wikipedia is one of the top 10 most viewed websites across the world, and it's free and open, and anyone can use the information that's in there really in any way that they want to. They can put that information or images in textbooks. So having our collections online and having just more representation about women's accomplishments on Wikipedia is really important, especially because of the stats that we just talked about, where women really aren't being represented in full on Wikipedia right now.
Can you tell us what a Wikipedia Edit-a-Thon is and what that looks like?
Definitely. So it is an event. It can be virtual or in person, where a group of Wikipedians come together to edit around a specific topic. In this case, our wonderful air and space curators have developed a list of women that they feel like are not represented on Wikipedia and need to be. Either they don't have articles or their articles are really slim. So Wikipedians like myself will help do a little training where you can learn some of the basics to edit Wikipedia. At a virtual event, we'll screen share and walk you through all the different ways to do things. It's really a community event. It's a collaborative event. It's a way where even if you are just coming to absorb the information about what Wikipedia is and how to edit, you don't necessarily have to edit. You can kind of just take the information in and maybe edit at the next one as you feel comfortable. But they're really a lot of fun, and you can pop in and pop out as you feel like you have time to do.
Somebody would like to know, how does one get involved in editing for Wikipedia?
Well, it's free to create an account. Anyone can edit Wikipedia, definitely. There are a lot of YouTube tutorials where you can learn to edit Wikipedia. You can attend an Edit-a-Thon, but we really are a community of editors. Millions, hundreds of thousands of edits are being made every day, but millions a month. This is something where your involvement can help change the way that information is presented, represented on Wikipedia. And it may seem, why would I spend my time editing Wikipedia? Well, we know that if things aren't on Wikipedia, they may not be accessible. Not everyone has journal subscriptions. Not everyone has even newspaper subscriptions. So having the ability to have fact-based, reliable, free information through Wikipedia is valuable all across the world.
I want to remind everyone that we are taking questions. Please go ahead and put those in the comment section. And if you let us know where you're watching from, we'll try and give you a shout out. Kelly, are there any stories in some of these Edit-a-Thons that you've worked on that have surprised you in any way?
Sometimes I'm surprised at how quickly things populate online. At our last Air and Space Edit-a-Thon in 2019, the article for Vera Simmons was created. She was a balloonist, I believe, and within 5 minutes, her article was populating on Google searches, populating on Siri asks. And so those things are really moving and powerful in terms of how quickly we're writing new histories online and that other people can view them and search them. It really is almost instantaneous.
Kelly, thanks so much. We're going to try and check back in with you a little bit later in the program. But now I'd like to bring on Dorothy Cochran. She is a curator in the Aeronautics Department at the National Air and Space Museum. Dorothy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. It's exciting.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about some of the research that you did even before Wikipedia was around?
Yeah, I'm showing my age here, I guess, how long I've been at the museum, pre-Wikipedia, pre-internet. But, the museum has always had women in its collections and in our exhibits, even though, there weren't that many that were involved in the earlier years. There were the luminaries like Amelia Earhart and Jackie Cochran and some of those others. But the questions that came as people started to come to the museum, which opened in 1976, were about people came in and looking and they see everything about all these great things that happened in aviation. But then they would say, well, where are the women? Weren't there more women in aviation than Amelia Earhart? And indeed there were. It kind of took a time frame for that to grow. But I found myself more and more basically answering the same letter over and over and over, because this is when people wrote letters and they said, I saw Amelia Earhart, or I didn't see, Harriet Quimby, or I, want to know more about women pilots. And so I kept trying. I had a basic paragraph that was, just your basic paragraph that you send out to everybody, and then I would tailor the rest of the letter to their specific question. And this sounds easy, but this is also, before a lot of computers, they're using for letters, and I'm typing and I'm doing the same letter over and over. So finally, I decided that maybe I should put together a little information sheet about the women who were in the galleries. And I got a summer intern, and together for the next year or so, we compiled about 30 or so mini biographies and created the Women in Aviation page. And then following that, over the years as we added more women, as different exhibits came. And certainly when we opened the Udvar Hazy Center, we added more. And I did get some of the stellar people, women from the space side of the house as well. So, it just, that's how it started. So this, and then just as I was getting to the point of thinking, where am I going to get the money? Who's going to support this pamphlet I'm getting? The internet showed up and we got our webpage just in the nick of time.
Well, can you tell us one of the more interesting stories or lesser known stories that populated that page, and then eventually started to populate pieces of exhibitry in the museum?
Well, there are early airline pilots, and we had some of we had at least one or two, Terry Widrow, and we had Emily Howell. And, we did have a vertical flight exhibit on women helicopter pilots at one point. But one of the most fascinating women who was in the Pioneers of Flight Gallery is Bessie Coleman. And she was the first African-American woman and woman of Indigenous American descent to earn a pilot license. And her story, this is why she's in Pioneers of Flight. We had a section when the gallery opened. This section wasn't in it, but in mid 80s, we recognized that there were African Americans that deserved to be in the pioneering gallery. And she, of course, was one of them. And, she's trying in the late 19 teens, post World War I and into the early 20s, she decides that she wants to be a pilot because she wants to do something different. She envisions herself doing bigger and better things, but she can't get any kind of training in the United States because she's a woman and she's an African American. So, this is a story of someone who's really facing deep discrimination, so much so that it just is going to squash her life goals completely. And so she's advised by people, specifically the owner of the Chicago Defender newspaper, which was an African-American newspaper that was very forceful in trying to bring about more opportunity for African Americans. She's advised by that gentleman, Mr. Abbott, to learn French and go to France and get a license over there because she could do that over there. And believe it or not, she was able, through family, friends, and just sheer will and determination and bravery, to go over there and actually get a license from a very respectable, very forward-looking and well-known, the Cadron Brothers training school. So, it's just a fascinating story.
And she went on to inspire also Willa Brown, who, again, another great story that you don't often hear about. Can you tell us a little bit about Willa and how Bessie Coleman inspired her?
Well, yeah, it's the African Americans are basically running on a parallel track to the average Caucasian white Americans who are flying. And so in the 20s, they're just starting to a few fly. There were a couple of male pilots who flew prior to World War I and then in World War I. But then coming back to the United States, as Bessie did and as they did, they found so little opportunity. And they found that they just had to band together and try to do this on their own on a parallel track. So Bessie was eager to start a flying school, and she barnstormed to make money for that. But unfortunately, she was killed in an accident as a passenger in 1926, and so she never realized her dream. But then, by the late 1920s and early 30s, she was already, people were remembering there was this woman pilot who really wanted to get ahead, and they started thinking, we're going to pick up the gauntlet here. We're going to pick it up and we're going to do it. And so there was a Bessie Coleman Aero Club that was in Chicago. There was a Bessie Coleman Aero Club that was in LA and Los Angeles. And these are the people then who banded together, African Americans who trained each other and supported each other to make flights and to be able to learn and prove that African Americans could fly, which unfortunately a lot of society thought they were incapable of doing. So Willa Brown was in Chicago with the Chicago group of they first acquired their own field in Chicago to fly, and then eventually moved to a better field, Harlem Field in southwest Chicago. And there they got together and started training each other. And Willa was the first woman of the era to get her private pilot license and commercial license, 1938 and 39. And from there, then she was able to take advantage of some of the groups that existed, like the Civil Air Patrol and the Civilian Pilots Training Association. And so she was able to work with the group that were at Harlem Field and the Coffey School of Aeronautics. She was married to Mr. Coffey, and together they formed a school that really brought along opportunities for African Americans. And eventually these training schools led to more and more African Americans being capable and then being accepted into the Tuskegee Airmen, which of course flew in World War II. So it's everybody recognizing everybody else, working together, supporting each other in this vacuum that is segregation in the United States. She went on to be an official, an officer of the CAP, and she was the director of the Civilian Pilot Training Program for the Coffey School of Aeronautics. And eventually, then, as they honored Bessie Coleman, eventually there was also a group later of female mechanics, aviation mechanics in the 2000s here, who honored her with a mechanics club, a mechanics kind of prize and honorary there. So it's, she notices she's honoring Bessie Coleman, and then the women's maintenance group honors Willa Brown. So it just all keeps paying itself forward.
Well, there are a lot of other great stories on the website. I recommend everybody go ahead and check that out. We've got some people watching from Liberty, Missouri, Bemidji, Minnesota, Greensburg, Louisiana, and the Ukraine. Let us know where you're watching from and keep those questions coming. Next up, we're going to take a look at Shasta Ways. She is an incredible pilot. She has a great story, and she is an inspiration to a lot of people. Let's take a look at Shasta Ways.
Hi everyone, my name is Jamie Helander, and I'm a Smithsonian intern with the American Women's History Initiative and the National Air and Space Museum. And I have a very exciting guest with me today. Her name is Shasta Ways, and she is the youngest woman to fly around the world. Welcome, Shasta.
Thank you so much. It is my pleasure to be here.
So, Shasta, just to get us started, could you tell us a little bit about your story, please?
Sure. So in 2017, I flew solo around the world in a single engine aircraft, visiting 22 countries across 5 continents, flying close to 25,000 nautical miles by myself in a single engine Bonanza. And the core of this flight was to go out there around the world and connect with children, talk to them about careers in STEM and aviation. Upon completing the flight, which took 145 days, I became the youngest woman to fly solo around the world in a single engine aircraft. But the biggest highlight was me interacting with over 3,000 children face to face and talking to them about careers in STEM and aviation. Post-flight, we have Dream Soar, my nonprofit. We have visited 9 additional countries, and we've participated in over 60 outreach events, again, to promote STEM and aviation.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing your story. That is truly amazing, and I really appreciate it because you've really, truly inspired me throughout my life and so many kids around the world as well. Wikipedia is such an accessible platform for people all over the world to access information. What does it mean to you to have your story told on this Wikipedia platform today?
Well, Jamie, it's so unreal to me that I have a Wikipedia page. It's something I'm so proud of. But when I first got into aviation, I tried so hard to find the women who've been in this industry and who've served it. really looking for role models. And it was very tough back in 2008 to find some of the key women throughout our history. And I really wanted to learn about these women so that I can have some sort of proof that women can be successful in aviation. So the fact that you all are creating or expanding this platform to bring awareness, to feature some of these very incredible women, and it's giving proof to people that women can be in this industry and they can do great things. And it's an industry where women belong. So I think the work you all are doing is so important, and I commend you all on it.
That's exactly right. More women role models for young kids all across the world is why we are doing this today. In aviation and aerospace, we need to amplify their voices and their stories. And something else that we've learned recently is that images on a Wikipedia page are really what make or break the success of that page. Now, with that in mind, I understand you have some very exciting news to share with us.
You're absolutely right. Pictures are so powerful. So I've shared 2 pictures that I took during the global flight around the world. One is of me with young girls from Egypt who came out to the Cairo International Airport to greet me and to be a part of our outreach event. So I snapped this cool picture of the girls behind me. It was a selfie. And the second picture that I uploaded from the outreach events around the world is of me at an orphanage in India. It was very powerful for me to go to an orphanage and connect with those young girls and talk to them about aviation being an opportunity for them. And you can just feel the emotions of the young girls through those pictures, which was really special for me. And I really hope you all enjoy those pictures as much as I do.
I am so excited for you to be here with us and to share your story. Thank you so much for your time, Shasta, and I wish you blue skies and tailwinds for your next adventure.
Thank you, Jamie.
Shasta Ways also donated or uploaded one more photo that she's going to share on Wikipedia as well. So be sure to look for that. Now, as we said, images really help a Wikipedia page. And some people don't have photos in the public domain. And that's where our next guest, Diane Kidd, came in. She helped us illustrate another image for Wikipedia. Diane, can you show us the image that you
Yes.
illustrated and tell us who it is of?
Okay.
Well, that's not this year's image.
No, but I can show you the one that I did
Yeah.
this year. There we are.
Yes. And Diane, who is this?
This is Alverna Williams, and she is a pilot who happens to be disabled. She lost both of her legs when she was a little girl, and that did not stop her. She had determination, and this is what she wanted to do. So it's a little bit like Bessie Coleman, that nobody can stop me. I'm going to do what I need to do.
Diane, what is your process like when you are asked to paint a portrait?
Usually the portraits that I get are black and white. This is before color was introduced. And I think as an artist, I feel that it's important for people to see, for me, in color. So I usually take a black and white image or a very small image that I can find, maybe if not on Google, then I try to, find a means of getting the image, and then I'll make it into color. What I also try to do with the image is that, because that's a great sketch. So I usually sketch it out, and just try to capture something about the person. So that's like my primary sketch, looking at and then I add color, which is I'm using watercolor and a color pencil with this.
Let's bring Kelly back in, and we're going to talk a little bit more about Wikipedia and images. But before we get to that, I know, Diane, that you have some photos of your drafting table, and I just want to show those so that you can see all the tools of the trade that go into creating these images.
Yep, I think this is my working artist studio. When I started, I just had a table, then I added a lamp, and then I added some materials. And it's a fun process. You really get to experiment using paint and color pencil. So for all of you would-be artists out there, enjoy. I put some music on in the background and I have my light board, and that's what I start doing.
Kelly, can you talk a little bit about why it's great to have someone like Diane on hand to create these portraits for Wikipedia?
Definitely. I mean, one of the hardest things is getting images. Is they need to be rights free in the public domain, or they need to have a Creative Commons license. A lot of times that can be really tricky to find, and that contributes to why so many articles of women don't have images. So having an artist like Diane create a rendering that they release the rights to and agree to have everyone, be able to use and look at is really amazing and powerful. And this is the second time that she's done this for us, which is really wonderful, that we have 2 originals from her on Wikipedia of women that we previously couldn't see before.
And we have a slide of some of the other images that have been released during past Edit-a-Thons. Kelly, do you want to tell us a little bit about this image?
Sure. Yeah, this is a lot of images that were released for the event that's happening right now. These are all women that, either are coming from our collections or donated from the pilots themselves. So they're going through their own personal archives and releasing these images so that we can use them on Wikipedia.
And somebody has asked a question and they want to know, what is the difference between images on Wiki Commons and what you can find on Google?
Okay, so what's on Wikimedia Commons are images that are either, like I said, in the public domain, and we've been able to discern that, or the copyright holder has released their rights to the image. So if I took a selfie of myself on my iPhone, I own the copyright to that image. But if I wanted to upload that onto Wikimedia Commons, I would have to release my rights to the image for it to be able to stay there. The Wikimedia Commons is a repository of all rights-free images that are able to be used in varying ways. So some will have a requirement that you need to attribute and say, this is Kelly Doyle's image. And some have requirements where you don't have to do that. What's on Google is just a huge hodgepodge of images from all over of varying rights statuses. And 9 times out of 10, those cannot be used on Wikipedia.
We're going to go ahead and bring Dorothy back into the conversation because we've got some other questions coming in about doing research. Dorothy, besides Wikipedia, which is oftentimes where I start, where else can you go to find out more information, in particular on these women that we're talking about today?
Well, if you have a name and you just want to know more about someone, you can often just Google their name, and if they've written anything, they have their own publication that will pop up. Some of the women that you had on there, Erin Miller and some of the others have all written books. So that's one way to do it. There are a lot of publications. You can just Google women's history, women's aviation history. And then, of course, you can, go to an actual library. Do they still exist? Yes. And, but there are many ways to do that. And just, pick up history books, pick up books on the era that you're looking at. But I think one of the best ways is to just go online and just start asking, where are the women pilots? Tell me more about women aviators, and they'll pop up.
Diane, someone would like to know how you became such a great artist.
Oh my goodness, I am flattered. Who asked that question? I've been drawing ever since I've been a little kid. My mom used to give me plain pieces of paper and some crayons, and I used to draw when we were at church because she tried to keep me quiet. And one of the ways of doing that was to give me crayons and paper. And I've been drawing ever since. I love it. So, as I said, for all you artists out there, keep drawing and use whatever paper or materials that you want to create your image.
I also want to give a shout out actually to our incredible archive staff who has been on this chat with us today and have been answering questions in the comments section. Now, to learn even more about the Smithsonian's collection, way more than you can find on Wikipedia, please visit our archives. The website is up there. And Kelly, we're going to wrap up today by asking you, how long will it take for the work that is being done today to show up on Wikipedia?
Almost immediately. So we do have a landing page for today where we're all editing from and looking at the articles. I suspect that by the end of the day, a lot of those articles will be created. And so from creation, when you hit publish, to when you can view it as a user just Googling and trying to find the article on Wikipedia, it's about 5 minutes. So definitely watch out for updates to Shasta's page, for updates to Alverna Babb's page, and you'll be able to see those, I would say, by 3:30 Eastern.
Great. Ladies, thank you all so much for joining us today. This has been a great chat, and I hope that everybody who's watching will check out Wikipedia for all the hard work that the Wikipedians are doing today. Before we go today, I just want to mention a couple of things. The next episode of STEM in 30 comes out next week. It is all about remote sensing, and we will feature some of the amazing things that NOAA is working on. So we hope you can join us. If you enjoyed this program, be sure to follow STEM in 30 on Facebook and Twitter, and subscribe to the National Air and Space Museum's YouTube channel. We love to hear your feedback. You can email us at stemin30@si.edu. And again, thank you so much to all the Wikipedians who are doing this great work today. And be sure to check it out online later this afternoon. Thanks for watching.